Hey guys, I got a quick question for all of you. Um, Tell me about your tolerance for length of a video. I like to make nice short videos that you can digest pretty quickly, but sometimes the contents require a longer discussion unless I can find better ways to break them down. So let me know if you can tolerate a 12, 20, 25, 30 minute type of video. And I'll tailor the way we present this stuff to what you guys prefer. For now, what I want to do is I want to tell a story about NUMMI. So in the story of Toyota, um, we got through the '60s again with Deming and Duran. We got through the oil crisis in the early '70s, and now exports are ramping up, and Toyota is seeking ways to actually build their cars where they actually sell them, and that means they want to build cars in the United States. And of course, at the time, in the late '70s, early '80s, the laws wouldn't allow foreign ownership of any companies in the United States. Well, that all changed in the early '80s, and in 1984, the law was changed to allow a joint venture between foreign car makers as long as they were partnered with a domestic car maker. Right. So Toyota heard this, and immediately they ran to their old friends, Ford, because Ford has been around for a long time, but Ford was not interested in a joint venture with them. So they went over to General Motors. And General Motors had this plant in Fremont, California. And it was the worst performing plant in the entire General Motors system. Worst quality, worst productivity, worst absenteeism. They had about 20% absenteeism. So every day, about a fifth of the workforce just wouldn't show up. And if you read some of the stories, the ones who did show up were not all there, right? They were either inebriated or under the influence of something. But it was a UAW plant, and uh, normally the UAW polices that pretty well, but in this case, things just weren't pulling together. So General Motors first tried to automate as much as they could. So they spent millions and millions of dollars automating processes, and then they reduced the headcount by, I don't know, about half maybe. But that still didn't bring up their quality, it still didn't bring up their productivity. And so a couple of years after that, or about a year after that, General Motors decided to shutter the plant, just close the plant and put it in mothballs. And about that time is when Toyota came by saying, hey, we need a joint venture. General Motors said, hey, we've got this plant, Fremont, California. We could do a joint venture and we can build cars together there. Now, I secretly think that General Motors had in mind that this was absolutely going to fail. They insisted that Toyota hire back those union employees that they just sent home. Um, all those lazy, good for nothing, criminal kinds of employees that General Motors was kind of painting a picture about. Initially, Toyota said, no, 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 we want to hire our own people and teach them how to do this from scratch. And that didn't go over with anybody. So the deal was you got to hire back those union employees. And Toyota said, okay, we'll hire back the union employees on one condition. There's no General Motors management. It's all Toyota management, and we'll work with the UAW team. And of course, everybody in General Motors was happy about that because now when it fails, they couldn't get blamed for it, right? So Toyota comes in, they reorganize the workplace, and this was in December 1984 is when NUMMI opened. It was the New United Motor Manufacturing International, or Incorporated. Within a year, after Toyota gets in there, teaches everybody the Toyota production system, puts them in teams, gets them focused, asks the team members questions, listens to the answers. That's the best plant in the General Motors system within a year. And of course, General Motors was in there studying all the time, and they must have written hundreds of white papers, but nobody really knows whatever happened to those. Okay, so how did they do it? Like I said, if you what I want you all to do is see if you can find some articles from the newspaper in Fremont, San Jose, and San Francisco area of California in 1984 and 1985, and see what people were actually saying about this new Toyota management system. It's incredible. They act as if no one has ever listened to them before. So NUMMI, as the best performing plant in General Motors, continued to thrive for 2 decades, and it was only in 2008 when General Motors had to file bankruptcy in the economic collapse that they pulled out of the joint venture, and then Toyota acknowledged that NUMMI was their most expensive plant in the United States. And so what they did was they decided they were going to have to shut that plant down, but instead of just shutting it down and laying all the people off, they spent millions of dollars on placement firms to make sure everybody who was working there had a job, and then they were constantly looking for someone to come into that plant and take it over and continue to work there and work with the workforce. And they found that somebody in Tesla. So Teslas were being built in Fremont, California, in that very same NUMMI plant. So I thought that was a pretty cool story. I guess Tesla is looking to move out too because the area is just too expensive. So go and find some additional information about NUMMI. Ask a couple of questions. Some of the secret to organizational change can be found in those discussions that reporters had with those union members back in the 80s. So take a look at that. Tell me what you see, and I'll follow up with a little story about Toyota in Kentucky next.